Hey guys, it's Ornlu, and as I'm recording this, the new DLC for AoE2 DE, the Three Kingdoms, was announced yesterday, and the reactions to the announcement of the DLC and the patch that accompanied the announcement, they've been very mixed, shall we say, with a lot of very vitriolic and upset posts on Reddit and on the AoE forums, and just anecdotally comments on my Twitch stream, I know on other people's Twitch streams, on Discord, and just a lot of comments in the AoE2 community space that are very unhappy with the direction that AoE2 is going with this expansion. So the purpose of this video is to explain for people who might not be familiar why is everybody so upset, and why we are in this situation, and what could be done perhaps going forward. But before I get into this, I do just want to say that a lot of the discourse surrounding this this whole debacle has been very vitriolic, and I would say even caustic. And I would just remind everybody to be respectful, because a lot of the comments and posts and whatnot have not been. And just remember that the devs are people too, and they ultimately are trying to work for what they think is the best version of Age of Empires possible. And even if myself and many other people will disagree with the way that the direction the game is going, yeah, just remember that they're people. So any very mean comments I will immediately get rid of. Still, let's just go through this. A few weeks ago just a few weeks ago, there had already been out at that point for several weeks the teaser images for the upcoming expansion. We see there were like a couple of promo images with various Chinese-y looking cities, so people were already aware that, okay, the DLC is going to be about China. Then in the big patch note announcements they did a few weeks later, they threw in tons and tons of hints here and there about potential Chinese civilizations. So all of the internet sleuths were out in full force, and of course I myself was one of them, thinking that, okay, based off of the evidence, we're probably getting the Jurchens as civs and the Tonguts as civs and some other stuff. And in the patch notes announcement, they said there would be 5 civilizations added to the game. That would be in both single player and multiplayer, which is an important point. Then you had Cision, who is the lead developer at Forgotten Empires, go on Gamer Legion's podcast with Masmora and Viper and say, okay, we're going to have a China DLC, it'll be coming, and we're not going to split up the Chinese, they're going to be civilizations around China. And this is kind of interesting, right? Because this isn't the first civilization split DLC in the game. We had Dynasties of India, where we took an existing civilization, the Indians, which everyone agreed was too broad of a... Like, South Asia's has too many different empires and kingdoms and people groups and histories that to be, I guess, acceptably represented by a single civ. So that's what Dynasties of India did. They split it into Hindustanis, Bengalis, Dravidians, and Gurjaras. And people were pretty happy about that. The individual units themselves, maybe less so, but the idea that, okay, we have Indians, they don't properly represent all of India, so let's at least be more representative and have a North India civ, an East India civ, a South India civ, and a West India civ. So at least, yeah, you can't have every single people group represented in AoE2 civs just because there can only be so many civs in the game. But 4 civilizations representing the 4 major areas of India and South Asia, not a bad idea. People thought we'd be getting something similar. Now, with China and the Chinese, it's a little bit different, because the in-game Chinese civilization represents every single major ethnically Han-dominated Chinese kingdom and empire throughout the entirety of the AoE2 Middle Ages. So basically going from Eastern Jin in like the 400s all the way through the Ming at the end of the AoE2 timeframe. So the new civilizations wouldn't necessarily be splitting up China, because that wouldn't really make that much sense, because we don't do dynasties in AoE2. It's not like we could have a Ming civilization and a Tang civilization and a Song civilization. That just doesn't really make sense. But what you could do is a lot of the Sinicized empires and kingdoms around the sort of the Han kingdoms, like the Jurchens and the Khitans and the Tonguts and the Tibetans and the Dali/Bai, or maybe the Hunan or something like that. So you have options that you can make a DLC that focuses on China and brings Chinese history and the diversity there that a lot of people don't know about to light. So people were getting really, really excited for that, because There's a lot of history there that really hasn't been told in AoE2 before, despite it being such a large portion of the world with obviously so much history and, of course, a very big player base, right? The Chinese and East Asian player base is quite substantial in AoE2. So people got really, really excited and thought they knew what the DLC was going to be. Fast forward to yesterday, and releasing the Three Kingdoms expansion. Yeah, that made a lot of people very unhappy because they felt let down. And there are several reasons for this. Part of which I said in my own prediction video when I thought we were getting the Three Kingdoms. I only learned that we were getting this for sure a couple days in advance when I had early access so I could make those videos for launch. So like when I did my prediction video, I did not know for sure. I mean, I obviously guessed, but there isn't some like secret cabal with everybody, all the content creators that are like, oh, we should have our DLCs looking like this and this. Trust me, guys, the content creators have very little influence on things. So I guess let's just jump right into it. People think that the Three Kingdoms are not a good focus for the DLC, and they believe that the Three Kingdoms themselves, Shu, Wei, and Wu, should not be individual AoE2 civilizations. So the premise of the DLC is wrong, and the Three Kingdoms being separate civilizations is also wrong, which is worth the distinction for reasons we'll get to in a little bit. As a side note, what's been interesting is that the patch that has coincided with this announcement, in a lot of ways, has been very positively received. People love all of the new skins for castles and elite unique units. I mean, so many comments on my video saying that they love them, and on Twitch as well. And then you have all the infantry changes that people are super excited about, and even watching pro players and casting them the past couple days. It's been a lot of fun seeing more infantry play. People are excited about the fire lancers and the rocket carts that are in the game, bugs on the rocket carts aside. But people are generally really excited about those. It's just the Three Kingdoms is really the major sticking point. So why don't people want the Three Kingdoms? I talked about it in my own prediction video, but to TLDR a lot of these Reddit threads and a lot of the comments here on the forums, as I've actually gone through and read a lot of them, there are several different arguments and different reasons why people don't think that the civs belong. First is the time frame. The Three Kingdoms were in the 200 CE, which is way before, a couple hundred years before the fall of the Roman Empire, which is generally the start of the AoE2 time frame. Now, history and historical time periods are always relative, and I think that it's actually pretty reasonable to argue that, okay, just because the European civs are based around the end of the end of the Roman Empire doesn't mean that time frame necessarily works in other parts of the world. That I do understand. That said, AoE2 civs don't exist in a vacuum, and you have to think about the AoE2 civs insofar as they interact with the other AoE2 civs. So that's one of the reasons why people think it's so weird that Romans exist in a game with a lot of gunpowder and whatnot, because there is still this grander era of the Middle Ages that sort of incorporates, again, very roughly 400 to 1600. So that is something that people are really unhappy about. I actually think it's the weakest argument against it, but yeah, Three Kingdoms, not in the proper time frame. Another one is that, despite the name of the franchise, the factions in AoE2 are civilizations. They're not kingdoms or empires, or whatever polity you want. To varying degrees, the civilizations in AoE2 represent a people group, or some sort of shared historical community that transcends a single kingdom or empire, right? The Franks represent all the way from the Frankish tribes in the very beginning of the AoE2 timeframe, all the way through the Kingdom of France at the end of the Middle Ages. So it's sort of a similar people group, or different groups of people that have that shared commonality and shared history. Obviously, there's say like the Byzantines, who just represent the Eastern Roman Empire, but of course the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantines, is very diverse and includes tons of different peoples and groups throughout the entirety of the Middle Ages. So that's sort of like the core of what every AoE2 civ is. Adding the Three Kingdoms as unique civilizations is the furthest away we would ever get from like them actually being civilizations, right? They are just distinct kingdoms, and they're Han Chinese kingdoms. So that means that as far as like civilizations go, they're all the same civilization. They're just different kingdoms within the same civilization that are not distinct from each other, and also not distinct from the existing Chinese civilization, right? The one in the game that's been in there since Age of Kings. So it's basically, you have the Chinese civ and then 3 Chinese civ variants, which makes people unhappy. For a European comparison, one that I've liked is that we have the Spanish Civ in game, and then they released a DLC that had Aragon, Castile, and Leon as separate civs, which is just like, it's weird that you have that overlap. Another complaint is that, okay, not just are the three kingdoms, the kingdoms and not civilizations, but they're not even super long-lasting kingdoms that it would at least occupy most of the AoE2 timeframe, right? They lasted 60 years at most. Not exactly super long-lasting, grand entities that completely shaped the history of a region, right? They were sort of a flash in the pan historically, especially as all of the three kingdoms would eventually unite into what is the Chinese civilization in the game. So it just feels super off. So then all of that together creates this idea of okay, why on earth would we, in all of Chinese history, choose to focus on the three kingdoms? Because there are so many good stories that can be told through civilizations and through campaigns that better represent China during the Middle Ages, or broader East Asia. And then you have to think to the politics behind it. And this is indeed where my own speculation was based off of, and when I was seeing the hints, I guess, that we could be getting the three kingdoms, I was really worried that somebody at World's Edge, which is Microsoft, was thinking that the Three Kingdoms era is so popular in media right now, both in the West and in China and East Asia, that, okay, we're going to cash in on this and bring that to AoE2 because it's very popular, so, get in on that hype train. And I do think that was very likely a miscalculation by people at World's Edge. And again, we're putting on our speculation hats, guys. This is 100% me guessing. My guess is that they originally were going to... Okay, so they originally were going to have a China DLC. That original China DLC was focusing on, I think, what people were expecting with Jurchens and Khitans added. Then, at some point, there was a decision somewhere to... Okay, we want to cash in on the Three Kingdoms, basically. Not cash in, but we think that the Three Kingdoms will be the most interesting and sell the best, right? I mean, this is a business after all. And so we kind of get this zombie DLC where you have sort of the proto-gunpowder non-Han Chinese civs with the Khitans and the Jurchens. And then you have the Three Kingdoms. And I think what makes people so upset, or one of the reasons that people are so upset, is that not only does it feel like a cash grab, even if it isn't in, I think, the eyes of the developers. It's for so many people, it's right here. This is what we want. It's part of the DLC with Khitans and Jurchens. It's people are we love this, but we can't stand this. And of course, the title of the DLC is the Three Kingdoms. The campaign focus is entirely on the Three Kingdoms, which means that the civilizations that are generally being well received, the Khitans and Jurchens, they don't even get campaign content. Not to mention the literal Chinese civilization not getting campaign content outside of the one-off historical battle in Victors and Vanquished that I have a video on yesterday, as this one goes live. So between sort of the obvious counterpoint to what people want from the Three Kingdoms being literally within the same DLC and the blueprint of what people wanted existing from Dynasties of India, you have this very clear, stark divide between, okay, here's the content that we think we're just getting pushed onto us because it's in vogue, so to say, versus the content that we know the devs can and want to make as well, which causes a lot of people to feel that the bigwigs behind the game are disconnected from the community. And again, I'm trying to summarize what a lot of the community being upset is about. I don't necessarily say that this all reflects me, although some of it does reflect my own thoughts. I am just trying to facilitate a reasonable discussion on all of these different points that people are making that are very emotionally charged because we all care so much about AoE2. And if there's anything that we've learned from this, it's that people really care about not just AoE2 the video game, although obviously we all do, but sort of the core identity of the game, right? The civilizations are sort of the essence of AoE2. Without them, there is no game to play. So even if the multiplayer only folks might not really care one way or the other if the civs make any sense or not, there is a very significant portion of the player base that absolutely loves the fact that this game is at its core rooted in history and rooted in real kingdoms and empires and civilizations. that is represented both in how these civilizations play in multiplayer and, of course, the campaigns that they take part in. So, although it, of course, doesn't apply to everybody, it matters to a lot of people, myself included, as this game has been a very significant portion of my life. So that's really where this disconnect lies. People in general feel like the DLC is pushing something on them that they don't want. And I didn't even mention the Chinese community. I don't speak Chinese in case my pronunciations of all the Chinese words was not clear enough. But from what I've seen from Chinese commenters who are, bilingual and post on both the Chinese forums and the English-speaking forums, is that the Chinese community is generally disappointed because they feel like they're getting not their actual medieval history, but sort of, again, this sort of in vogue content that they feel is being pushed on them. And it's not like, it's not a trick per se, but it feels like sort of the low-hanging fruit instead of doing what might be the most appropriate for Age of Empires. Obviously, I'm not speaking for everybody, and I'm not saying it's wrong to be excited about the DLC. Like, I'm really excited to play the campaigns. Even if I don't think the time frame is necessarily perfectly congruent with AoE2, I still think the campaigns are probably going to be a very fun experience. And if people are excited for the civs in multiplayer, then, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that how you enjoy AoE2 is wrong. Like, it's obviously a game that can be enjoyed in many different ways. That's why the game has lasted so long. So where do we go from here? Well, we're getting the DLC. There's obviously been a ton of work and money pumped into it, so yeah, guys, we're getting it. So I'm afraid we're not just going to redact the DLC, remove the Three Kingdoms, and replace it with Tonguts and Dali and Tibet. Unfortunately, that's not reality. What we could do, though, is say that, okay, the Three Kingdom civs, which I didn't even mention hero units, people are really upset about the hero units. Personally, I dislike the hero units, but I don't really think they're that different than Centurions, so I feel like it's a little overblown with how bad the heroes are, even if I myself also don't like it. People, I think, really want to move them to Chronicles, so to say, which is basically to banish them from ranked multiplayer, which is still the core. Again, it's the core multiplayer experience is ranked. And not just in terms of what people play via ranked, but also tournaments. So you have ranked, which people play, and even the lobbies are largely based off of what you have in ranked. And of course, tournaments are also based off of ranked, right? We don't have Achaemenids in tournaments. So I think that people would be much more okay with the DLC if you had the Three Kingdoms content restricted to single player, and then you had Jurchens and Khitans in multiplayer, which people are generally more excited about. I think that might not be a bad idea, and a way that the devs can extend an olive branch to the community, so to say, and say, okay, we hear you, we understand your concerns, we're still going to release the DLC, and we think it's going to be a great DLC for what it's going to deliver, but it's like, we hear you and we understand why you're coming from them. And I think that wouldn't be a bad idea personally, because I don't think competitive AoE2 would be ruined if we can't play as the way. I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I think that Khitans and Jurchens are far more interesting and have more interesting implications on competitive AoE2 than the Three Kingdom civs anyway. But that's just my perspective. Of course, let me know in the comments what you think about all of this drama. Please keep it respectful. And not just like, are you excited about the Three Kingdoms DLC, but what would you do with the civilizations going forward? Personally, I think just putting them in single player only and treating it as a campaign-focused expansion with that side, but having Jurchens and Khitans for multiplayer is probably the best way you could go about it that can leave all parties, if not completely happy, at least somewhat happy. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.